The briefing had 7 points. Officer commanded Thessan had delivered it 41 times across his career to handlers, researchers, diplomatic observers, and one very determined journalist who had subsequently decided to pursue a different story entirely. He had refined it over the years into something tight, clear, and impossible to misunderstand. 7 points. In order of importance. Point 1 was always the same. Do not, he said, under any circumstances, make direct eye contact with the Verath. He said it the way you say something when you need it to land, completely. Not loud, not dramatic, just level and slow, and with the particular weight of someone who has watched the alternative play out. Eye contact in Verath biology is a direct dominance challenge, he continued. Every species that has initiated visual contact without established hierarchy has triggered an aggression response. The response is immediate, total, and has resulted in 3 facility incidents in the past 2 years alone. He looked at the human researcher across the briefing table, Dr. Yara Cole, 31 years old, xenobiology posting, transferred from Kellen Station 6 days ago. She was listening with the focused, patient attention of someone taking the briefing seriously. Good. The Verath has 2 eyes, Thessan continued. You will notice them. You will feel the instinct to look. You will not act on that instinct. Yara nodded slowly. The remaining 6 points cover proximity protocols, vocalization responses, and emergency extraction procedure, he said. Any questions before I continue? She was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet, Thessan would later reflect, of someone deciding how to phrase something carefully. Just one, she said. Go ahead. When you say don't make eye contact, she said, does that apply to both eyes independently, or is it a general directive? Thessan looked at her. Why, he said slowly, would that distinction matter? Yara looked at the briefing folder in front of her, then back up at him. Because, she said, I've been calling the left one clear and the right one deep, and I want to make sure I'm understanding the rule correctly. Thessan set down his briefing folder. This was not a standard response to a standard question. He was aware of that. 20 years of containment briefings had given him a very specific script for very specific situations, and nothing in that script covered a researcher who had named Verath's eyes before receiving the briefing that explained why you didn't look at them. When he said carefully, did you make eye contact? Day 1, Yara said, you've been here 6 days. Yes. You made eye contact on your first day. First hour, technically, she said, I was doing an initial observation walkthrough. Nobody had briefed me yet. I looked through the viewport and it was already looking back, so she paused, looked back. Thessan picked up his briefing folder again. Put it down again. And the aggression response, he asked. There wasn't one, she said simply. The briefing room was very quiet. Dr. Cole, Thessan said, in 3 years of this facility's operation, every instance of direct eye contact with the Verath has resulted in an immediate aggression response. We have footage. We have medical reports. We have 2 complete protocol rewrites. I know, she said. I read the incident files when I arrived. After the eye contact. Yes. He looked at her with the careful, focused attention of someone checking whether the person across from them fully understood the weight of what they were saying. She did. He could see that she did. She wasn't dismissing the incidents or the protocols or the 3 years of documented evidence. She was simply reporting what had happened with the same factual calm she would use for any field observation. It looked at me, she said, and I looked back, and then she considered the word, tilted its head. Tilted. Left side, about 30 degrees. She demonstrated briefly with her own head, like it was trying to see me from a different angle. Thessan stood up. Come with me, he said. To the observation deck? To see, he said, whether what you're describing is currently visible on the monitoring feed. He was already moving toward the door. Thessan, she said behind him. He stopped. It does it every time I walk past the viewport, she said quietly. The head tilt. Every single time. The monitoring feed showed the Verath at the far end of the containment area. It was always at the far end, 23 meters from the viewport, positioned against the rear wall where the lighting was dimmest. in the particular corner it had claimed on its third day in the facility and had not voluntarily left since. The monitoring team had documented this as territorial anchoring, a behavioral pattern suggesting the Verath was maintaining maximum distance from all points of potential contact. Thessan had always found this reassuring. He found it significantly less reassuring now, because the moment Yara stepped up beside him at the viewport, the Verath moved. Not slowly, not cautiously. It crossed 23 meters of containment floor with the fluid, purposeful efficiency of something that had simply decided where it was going and saw no reason to take its time about it. It stopped at the near barrier, 6 meters away, the closest it had voluntarily positioned itself to any viewport since the facility opened. Thessan looked at it properly for the first time in months. He had spent 3 years working hard to observe the Verath from the periphery, behavioral data, monitoring feeds, secondary assessments through aides who were better at not making eye contact than he was. He had built an entire professional framework around the principle of looking slightly to the left of it. It was enormous, dark-plated, fur-limbed, with a bearing that communicated age and intelligence in equal measure. The kind of creature that made the air feel different when it moved through it. And the eyes. He could see them clearly now. The left one, clear, Yara had called it, was pale, almost colorless, reflecting the containment lighting like still water. The right, deep, was dark, genuinely dark, the kind of dark that seemed to go somewhere rather than simply being the absence of light. Both were fixed on Yara. The head tilted, 30 degrees. Left side. There, Yara said softly. Not triumphant, just noting it. From the monitoring station behind them, a comm crackled. Officer Thessan. The monitoring team coordinator, voice carefully neutral. We're seeing something on the behavioral feed we need you to look at. What is it? Thessan said without looking away from the viewport. A pause. The Verath's aggression indicators, the coordinator said. They're not elevated. I can see that. Sir, the coordinator said, they're suppressed, below baseline, below any reading we've recorded in 3 years. Another pause, shorter. It's calmer right now than we've ever documented it. Thessan looked at Yara. Yara was looking at the Verath. The Verath was looking at Yara. Why? Thessan said, quietly, does it respond to you like this? She was quiet for a moment. I think, she said, it's the way I look at it. Explain that. When you look at something dangerous, she said, you look at it to measure it, to assess the threat, to calculate distance and speed and exit routes. She didn't look away from the viewport. That's not what I'm doing. What are you doing? Thessan asked. I'm just looking, she said, just seeing it. The Verath pressed one limb slowly against the near barrier. Not a threat display. Something else entirely. It knows the difference, Yara said quietly. Thessan pulled the 6-day monitoring archive that evening. He had not intended to spend 3 hours doing this. He had intended to file an incident report, flag Dr. Cole's access for review, and go home with the contained satisfaction of someone who had identified an irregularity and routed it to the correct administrative channel. Instead, he sat in the monitoring room alone after the night shift cleared out and watched 6 days of behavioral data rearrange everything he thought he understood about the Verath. Day 1, Yara at the viewport for 11 minutes, the Verath at 23 meters, its standard position for the first 4 minutes. Then a slow, deliberate movement toward the viewport that the automated system had flagged as approach behavior and prepared to classify as pre-aggression. Except the aggression indicators never followed. The Verath had stopped at 18 meters, stood there for 7 minutes, then returned to its corner when Yara left. Day 2, 14 meters. Day 3, 11 meters. Day 4, 9 meters, and a behavioral flag Thessan had personally reviewed at the time and attributed to equipment calibration error because the alternative made no sense. The flag was for what the system classified as investigative display. The posture the Verath adopted when it was studying something it hadn't categorized yet. The posture in 3 years of documentation it had never once directed toward anything outside its own species. Day 5, 6 meters. Investigative display again. Duration 40 minutes. Day 6. Today. Barrier contact. Thessan sat back. The progression was not random. It was not incidental. It was a pattern so clear and deliberate that he felt slightly embarrassed it had taken him 6 days and a naming conversation to notice it. He found Yara in the research corridor the next morning. "You've been going back every day," he said. "Yes," she said. "You knew what was happening." "I had a theory," she said carefully. "What theory?" She looked at him with the direct, honest attention of someone who had been waiting for this question. "That it had never been looked at before," she said. "Not really. Just assessed, measured, managed." She paused. "I wanted to see what happened if someone just looked. And you saw the data," she said. He had. He couldn't argue with the data. "Dr. Cole," he said, "yesterday you asked about the eye contact rule applying to both eyes independently." "Yes." "Why did you name them separately?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because they're different," she said simply. "Clear sees everything at once, wide taking it all in. Deep focuses, narrows. When deep looks at you, it's looking at something specific." She met his eyes. "Yesterday, at the barrier, Deep was looking at my hands." Thessan looked at her hands. "I want to go in," she said quietly. "Into the containment area." "Yes." He opened his mouth. "Before you say no," she said, "look at the day 6 data again, specifically the last 4 minutes." He looked. The Verath at the barrier, Yara at the viewport, and, in the last 4 minutes, something in the footage that the automated system had not flagged because it had no category for it. The Verath's limb against the barrier, pressing gently repeatedly. The specific motion, Thessan realized with a cold, quiet certainty of something knocking. Knocking. Thessan sat with that word for a long time before he was ready to use it in a sentence. It was not a clinical term. It was not in any behavioral classification index he had ever consulted. It was a word that belonged in a different context entirely, in ordinary places, ordinary situations, ordinary interactions between beings who had decided they wanted to be on the other side of something. The Verath had been pressing its limb against the barrier in the specific, repeated rhythm of something that wanted a door opened. He filed the footage with Facility Director Orenth at 0700. Orenth watched it twice, said nothing for 4 minutes, and then said, "Get Dr. Cole and come to my office." They sat across from him 20 minutes later. Orenth was the kind of official who had built his career on measured responses and careful language, and he was currently doing something Thessan had never seen from him, looking at a file without reading it, just holding it, processing something that the file alone couldn't contain. The Conclave Containment Authority, Orenth said, reviewed our anomalous behavioral reports this morning. Thessan had not known they were reviewing. "They've issued a transfer order," Orenth said. "The Verath is to be moved to a deep containment facility on Verath Station within 72 hours. The room was quiet. "The behavioral anomalies," Orenth continued, "have been classified as potential containment instability. The assessment is that unpredictable behavior from an apex-rated specimen represents an unacceptable risk profile." Yara was very still. "It's not unstable," she said. "It's communicating." "Dr. Cole." "There is a difference," she said, "between an animal that has become dangerously unpredictable and an animal that has found something worth being predictable toward." Her voice was even. "Transfer it now, and we lose whatever this is. Permanently." The authority's decision. "Give me 72 hours," she said. "Inside the containment area. Direct contact. That is not a request I can approve without." The monitoring comm on Orentha's desk activated. The night shift coordinator. Voice stripped entirely of its professional neutrality. "Director, the Verath has moved to the viewport again." "Dr. Cole left the facility an hour ago," Orenth said. "Yes, sir," the coordinator said. "It's been at the viewport for 53 minutes. A pause. Alone. Orenth looked at Yara. Yara looked at Orenth with the patient, certain expression of someone who had already made their argument and was simply waiting for the evidence to finish making it for her. "It's looking for her," Thessan said, quietly. Nobody disagreed. Orenth approved the contact session at 0900, with conditions: 3 monitoring officers at all times, Full medical team on standby outside the containment corridor. Thessan present at the interior observation panel. Session duration not to exceed 40 minutes. At the first indication of elevated aggression indicators, any indication, any level, the extraction protocol activated immediately. Yara agreed to everything. Then she asked to remove the standard contact armor from the approved equipment list. The argument that followed lasted 22 minutes. Thessan made the case against 3 times in different configurations. Orenth made it twice. The senior monitoring officer made it once very clearly with a detailed reference to the medical reports from the 3 facility incidents. Yara listened to all of it. Everything it has responded to, she said when they finished, has been the absence of threat in how I present myself. I walk in wearing impact armor and carrying a containment rod, and I'm not Dr. Cole anymore. I'm every handler it's ever encountered. She looked at Orenth. You approve this session because you want to know if the contact is real. Armor gives you a controlled observation. No, armor gives you the answer. Orenth looked at Thessan. Thessan looked at the monitoring feed showing the Verath still at the viewport. Still waiting. No armor, Orenth said quietly. Containment rod stays outside. Medical team at the corridor entrance. The containment area door opened at 10:23. The Verath was already facing it. Yara walked in. No armor. No equipment. Hands loose at her sides. The same unhurried, open posture she had carried to the viewport every day for 6 days. The posture, Thessan realized watching from the observation panel, of someone who had decided before they entered that there was nothing in the room to be afraid of. The Verath didn't move. It watched her cross the space between them, 15 meters, 10-7, with the focused, absolutely still attention of something that had been waiting and was now making sure that what it was seeing was what it thought it was seeing. She stopped 4 meters away. Clear found her face immediately. Wide, reflective, taking in the whole of her at once. Deep narrowed. Found her eyes specifically. She looked back. Both of them. Directly. No glass between them for the first time. 4 meters. No barrier. No armor. Just Yara and the Verath and the specific quality of her looking that had no threat in it anywhere. The Verath lowered its head. Slowly. Deliberately. The way something lowers its head when it is making itself smaller not out of submission, but out of consideration, bringing itself to a level where the looking could go both ways more easily. Thessan's hand moved toward the extraction panel. Stopped, because the Verath made a sound. Low, resonant, coming from somewhere deep in its chest, a sound that lasted for seconds and then settled into silence. Thessan had been in this facility for 3 years. He had never heard that sound before. He pulled the archival behavioral records with shaking hands, running the acoustic signature through the documentation database. The match came back in 11 seconds. One record, 40 years old, field documentation from the first Verath contact team, filed by a researcher who had spent 14 months observing wild Verath social behavior before the species was designated apex contained. The sound had a classification. Verath Social Vocalization Category 1. Recorded exclusively between bonded pair members. Rough translation, recognized. I have found you. You are known to me. Thessan looked up from the record. In the containment area below, Yara had taken 1 step closer. The Verath hadn't moved back. His comm unit activated. The Conclave Containment Authority representative arrived early, calling from the facility entrance. Officer Thessan, I'm here to begin transfer preparation. Please confirm the Verath's current status. Thessan looked at the containment area. At Yara. At the Verath. At 4 meters of open space between them with nothing in it except the most significant first contact documented in 3 years of facility operation. He looked at the transfer order on his desk, then at the archival record still open on his terminal. Recognized. I have found you. You are known to me. Thessan looked at the comm unit for a long time. The authority representative was waiting. Professional, patient, operating well within his mandate. A transfer order was a transfer order, and the Conclave Containment Authority did not issue them casually or revoke them without documented cause. Thessan looked at the archival record on his terminal. Then he pressed the response. The Verath's current status, he said carefully, is bonded. A pause. Please repeat that. I'm transmitting a behavioral record to your credentials now, Thessan said. Field documentation. 40 years old. Acoustic signature match confirmed 11 minutes ago. Category 1 Social vocalization. The classification notes are on page 3. He kept his voice level. Clinical. The voice of someone presenting data rather than making an argument. Specifically the section on post-recognition behavioral deterioration following bond partner separation. Another pause. Longer. Are you telling me, the representative said slowly, that the transfer cannot proceed? I'm telling you, Thessan said, that the Verath's own biology has already filed a response to the transfer order. I'm simply forwarding it. He set down the comm unit. In the containment area below, Yara had closed the distance to 2 meters. Then 1. She stood within reach of a creature that had injured 14 handlers, compromised 3 facilities, and spent 3 years ensuring that every species that encountered it understood precisely what it was capable of. She stood there with her hands loose at her sides and her face open, and her eyes meeting clear and deep without armor, without glass, without the threat of threat assessment that every other pair of eyes had brought to this exact space. The Verath moved, slowly, with the specific deliberateness of something that understood the significance of what it was doing. It brought its head forward, past the space between them, past the distance that every containment protocol in the Conclave's management history had fought to preserve, and rested it against Yara's shoulder. Not a threat, not a display. The weight of something enormous choosing, for the first time in 3 years, to be still against something it had decided to trust. Yara closed her eyes, just for a moment, just long enough to feel the reality of it settle into something she would carry the rest of her career. Then she opened them and looked up at the observation panel. Found Thessan's face. Nodded once. He filed the amended report that afternoon. Transfer order suspended pending bond classification review. Verath behavioral status updated from apex contained, aggression primary to a designation that had not been used in 40 years of conclave fauna documentation. In the notes field, he wrote everything. The 6 days. The eye contact. The approach. The knocking. The sound that the monitoring equipment had almost not known how to classify. And, at the end, because the data required it and because it was simply true, he wrote, the Verath was not aggressive by nature. It was isolated by circumstance. 3 years of containment had given it nothing to look at except species who looked back with fear or measurement or managed distance. It had no framework for being seen without being assessed until a human researcher looked through a viewport on her first day and simply looked. He paused. Dr. Cole named its eyes on day 1. Clear and deep. She distinguished between them because she looked long enough and closely enough to find them different. In 40 years of Verath documentation, no other researcher had looked long enough to notice. He saved the report, closed the terminal. In the monitoring feed, the containment area was quiet. Yara sat cross-legged on the floor. The Verath lay beside her, enormous plated, ancient, with its head resting near her shoulder and both eyes open. Clear, wide, and reflective, watching the room. Deep, focused, and still, watching her. Both of them, for the first time in 3 years of documentation, showing something the behavioral database had no existing category for. Something that looked unmistakably like peace